Hello, hello, or should I say buongiorno to each and every one of you listening to our presentation.
Wow! Did you really prepare a bunch of Italian word for this?
Actually, it's the one thing I looked up in Google. Other than that, nada.
No matter, it is appropriate enough for paying homage to our literary piece for the day, authored by the esteemed Virgil Aeneid.
Oh yes. So today we will be discussing book 1 and 2 of Aeneid, and as usual, at the end of our summary, we will showcase our literary analysis from different approaches, which I hope will excite our listeners.
Of course, it will be exciting. After all, in this presentation, we encourage our listeners to throw their opinions at each other and have a healthy discussion.
That's right. So for starters, let's talk about the book one.
And here is the summary of Aeneid, Book 1. So in the book 1, the author Virgil showed this iconic first line, which is said that wars in a man I sing, an exile driven on by fate. He begins to lay out the story of Aeneas. And fate it is because Aeneas is destined to become the founder of Rome. But with every epic story comes a great conflict, and that is he will face great battles and challenges created by our antagonistic goddess Juno, the queen of the gods. She wants Carthage, her favorite city, to rule the world one day. But the fates decreed that a race of men descended from Trojans are fated to destroy it. So, fearing the destruction of Carthage, she interferes with Aeneas' destiny. But honestly, she's just pissed because Paris, a Trojan prince, chose Venus as the most beautiful goddess, insulting the beauty of our esteemed goddesses Juno and Minerva. Side note, Venus is actually Aeneas' mom, so that explains a lot. And to top it off, her husband Jupiter once ran off with a Trojan shepherd named Ganymede. So imagine her burning hate for the Trojans. That she made. Aeneas' journey takes 7 years to arrive at Latium. And now that the Trojans are sailing near Sicily, Juno angrily thought, Minerva burned Greek ships. Why can't I do the same? So she asked Aeolus, the wind god, who keeps the wind in his dungeon, to sink Trojan ships in exchange for a beautiful nymph, which may lead you to think, surely he will not agree. But oh no, no. Apparently, gods have a hard time finding wives for themselves. So he unleashes east, west, and southwest winds against the Trojans. So when it struck Trojan ships, Aeneas prays to the gods. He wished that he was killed at Troy, killed by Achilles just as Hector was. He thought that the Trojans who died defending Troy were much blessed than him who survived only to have no home. So Neptune, the god of the ocean, notices the storm and recognizes it as his sister's work. So he angrily commands the winds to return to Aeolus, and he calmed the sea. Unfortunately, out of the 20 ships, only 7 were able to land at a cove in Libya. And Anchises, a friend of Aeneas, started a fire, while Aeneas himself hikes up a mountain to try and see if any other of his men's ships survive. He instead spots a herd of deer, shooting 7 of them. He returned and fed the deer to his men and gave a rousing pep talk. He said, a joy it will be one day, perhaps, to even remember this. He says the fates have determined that they will reach Italy, so he encouraged them to cheer up, even though he himself grieves in that moment a true meaning of leadership. And in that moment, his mother, Venus, wherein his fate would change, she sought the counsel of Jupiter, where he foretells his future. He said that Aeneas will win a long war and will rule for 3 years, but his son, Ascanius, will rule for 30 years. Their descendants will rule until Romulus founds Rome, and I will grant them empire without end. It was also said that Juno will change her mind and come to love Rome, and eventually Julius Caesar will bring peace. He will close the gates of war and bind discord with 100 knots. Jupiter sent the god Mercury to make Dido, the queen of Carthage, and her people be friendly and hospitable to the Trojans. Aeneas and Achates went into the woods to explore the area where they have landed, and they come upon a virgin warrior who is actually Venus. She told Aeneas about Dido's past, how Pygmalion, her greedy brother, killed her husband Sichaeus for his wealth. When she learned what had happened from the blows of her husband, Dido led her friends to escape and founded the city of Carthage. Venus also informed that the lost ships have arrived safely at the harbor of Carthage. She revealed herself. The news advancements to make Aeneas and Achates invisible so that they can travel safely into Carthage. They make their way to the temple of Juno, where Aeneas feels welcome by the scenes of Trojan war. He said that even here, the world is a world of tears, and the burdens of mortality touch the heart. And still hidden, Aeneas and Achates watched Dido warmly welcome the other half of her fleet. And just then, the mist lifted and reveals Aeneas, who was made to look extra handsome by the powers of Venus. Aeneas praises Dido, and she welcomes him and calls for a grand feast. And he told Achates to retrieve gifts for Dido of beautiful clothing and jewels. Meanwhile, the mother of Venus is still concerned about the Juno's wrath and mistrustful of Carthaginian hospitality, sends Cupid disguises Aeneas' son Ascanius, and he brought gifts to the feast and sits in Dido's lap and enchants her, making her forget her former husband as she falls in love with Aeneas. Unaware of her doom, Dido asks Aeneas to tell the whole story of his 7 years of wandering. That's the end of our summary of Book 1. So here are the characters in the story in Book 1. We have Achates, of course, Aeneas' right-hand man. We have Aeneas, our main protagonist, the leader of the group of Trojans who fled the destruction of Troy, and he is fated to found Rome. Aeolus, god of the winds, whose powers Juno calls upon to create the terrible storm at sea. We have also Ascanius, Aeneas' young son, who will be a great forefather of the Romans. Dido, the queen of Carthage, and her love for Aeneas is tragic. We also have Juno, the queen of the gods and wife of Jupiter, and she opposes Aeneas' fate. Jupiter, often called Jove, is the king of the gods, husband to Juno and father of Venus. We also have Mercury, the messenger god, who delivers instructions from the gods to Aeneas. Neptune, god of the sea, who becomes territorial about the storm Juno commanded Aeolus to create and calms it. And lastly, Venus, the goddess of love, also Aeneas' mother, who helps and protects him. Setting. Our setting in this story of Book 1 is in Carthage, modern-day Tunisia, after the Trojan War and 7 years into his journey. Conflict. Juno's insecurity of the fate of her favorite city led her to sabotage Aeneas and his people on their way home. And on the other hand, Venus, worried about her son's safety, instructed Cupid to trick Dido to love Aeneas. Theme of the story is divine intervention, piety, prediction of faith, and vanity. So for our literary criticism in this book 1, we have 2 criticisms: reader response criticism and then feminist criticism. Let's proceed in the reader response criticism now. So in the story Aeneid in book 1, it shows the story of a demon who suffered a defeat in Troy but has the destiny of the founding of Rome. which is the typical story of a dramatic founding of a nation and the beginning of a great hero. But that is the goal. How about his journey? As what I have garnered as a reader, in Book 1 he was portrayed as a pious man who prayed to the gods when in danger. He is a leader who constantly encourages men despite of his own feelings, and a duty-bound man who looks upon favorably to his own heritage, the Trojans. However, we are all aware that almost if not all the tragedies that befall Trojans are the result of divine intervention. Gods and goddesses were portrayed as someone with mortal characteristics. Their moves or decisions are all laced with their emotions. Like Juno, just because she was not chosen as the most beautiful goddess, she loathed the Trojans. Venus, in fear of Aeneas' changing fates, helps him in every way, even in the expense of innocent bystanders like Dido. Is this mother's love, or to preserve her pride as the mother of the man who will found Rome? We will never know. Divine intervention draw more trouble than help. It is seen as a pattern even in the previous literatures. Meanwhile, in feminist criticism, so before we talk about the representation of female in Book 1, allow me to shed light to the moment when Aeneas encourages men to cheer up after they thought that some of their ships sunk. Hiding his own feelings of grief and loss, even the text before portrayed that a leader should be stoic, masculine, and firm. Even showing an ounce of emotion would maybe make his people disappointed and lose faith in him. So toxic masculinity at its finest. Now, to the females. Juno, the queen of the gods, the harbinger of evil in Book 1. She was portrayed as a vain, proud, and awful goddess who is narrow-minded and driven by her feelings. It was as if her worth was all because of her beauty and material things she favored, which is Carthage. On the other hand, Venus, portrayed heavily as a mother figure, her constant support of her son Aeneas, if you look at it in face value, is very touching. But if you look at it closely, she's a horrible mother who will not bother caring for others and only has concern about the welfare of her son, which will lead us to Dido. Dido is a strong woman who founded Carthage after her husband was killed by her brother King Pygmalion. There was a good representation at first, but then she was charmed by Cupid to love Aeneas. She was disrespected and removed of her autonomy and freedom to feel what she wanted to feel. Sad to say that in this modern age, a woman is still treated as such. Her achievements were dimmed and covered up with the shackles of love, a fake one at that. And although she followed the instructions given by the gods, they returned it with animosity and influence. So that's my criticism for this literary piece. Now, let's proceed to Book 2.
Good day, classmates. We shall now continue with the narration of Book 2 of Virgil's Aeneid. Here's how the narrative begins. A party of Trojans commanded by Aeneas kills a bunch of Greeks and then steals their armor to disguise themselves as the Greeks. Panthus and many others are killed when the Trojans, who fail to recognize them, open fire as the Greeks launch an assault on the royal palace. Aeneas leads the Trojans in a counter-offensive. So let's go on to the main plot of the book. In response to Dido's request, Aeneas continues his tragic tale, noting that doing so would cause him to feel grief again. 10 years into the Trojan War is when he transports us back to. Aeneas tells how the Trojans found the wooden horse on the beach and argued over what to do with it, though Coon is firmly in favor of killing it off. So at the story's beginning, the Danaans, or Greeks, had built a substantial hollow-bellied wooden horse as the reminder of the Greek army lay low a safe distance from Troy. The best of the Greek troops are hidden within the horse. The Trojans are astonished to see a colossal horse standing in the middle of what seems to be an empty battlefield. So the priest of Neptune, Laocoon, foretold the Trojans that the wooden horse was either stuffed with warriors or a war machine. He threw a spear at the horse in defiance. He pleaded with his compatriots to recall the last time the Greeks delivered a gift to Troy that didn't entail deception. So the Trojans could not, and of course, they are too worn out from the fight to believe him. So he thrust his spear into the horse's belly in a fit of rage. It trembles briefly, but not long enough for locals to figure out it's hiding more than just food. Sinon stated that the horse was sacrificed to the goddess Minerva. The latter turned against the Greeks when Ulysses destroyed one of her temples to confuse the Trojans. Sinon predicts that Minerva's wrath will fall upon Troy if the wooden statue is damaged. But the Trojans will triumph over southern Thrace like a tidal wave if they place the horse within their city walls. So after Sinon finishes his speech, Aeneas says two enormous serpents emerge from the sea and kill the priest of Troy. Laocoon and his two sons, as retribution for Laocoon's spear attack on the horse. The snakes then make their way to Minerva's temple. In response to the snake assault, the Trojans bring the horse into Troy in an attempt to satisfy Minerva. So, this strategy deceived the residents of Troy. They thought the Greeks had returned home after all. Some citizens advocated for bringing the wooden horse into the city. In contrast, others were skeptical of it and advocated for its destruction. Meanwhile, Aeneas has a dream in which Hector, the defeated head of the Trojan army, warns him that the city has been invaded. When Aeneas reaches the top of his house, he sees the city of Troy in flames and the combat underneath. He quickly grabs some weapons and leads a small group of his soldiers towards the city's citadel. Despite being vastly outnumbered, Aeneas and his troop manage to surprise and kill many Greeks. The group ultimately arrives at the palace of King Priam, where hostilities are heating up. After awaking from his nightmare, Aeneas armed himself and headed out into the city, intent on meeting his death in battle. After enduring numerous hardships, he and his fellow Trojans finally made it to Priam's trap palace, where they watched the destruction caused by Pyrrhus, Achilles' cruel son. The Greeks, under Pyrrhus, attacked the palace. A young boy named Polyas, Priam, and Hecuba's son, is murdered by Pyrrhus, who then sacrifices Priam on his own altar. So at this point in his account, Aeneas claims that he was almost overtaken with sadness for the killing when he saw Helen, the catalyst for the war, hiding. He plans to murder her, but Venus stops him by explaining that the gods, not Helen, are to blame for the war. The goddess Venus immediately urges Aeneas to leave Troy, saying that his destiny lies elsewhere. Anchises, Aeneas' father, refused to leave the house when his son visits. Thus Aeneas must return to Troy and find another way home. Anchises is eventually convinced to leave the city when omens arise, a harmless tongue of flame on Ascanius grow and a dazzling falling star, including Aeneas' wife, Creusa, their son Ascanius, and some other followers. The group was forced to live as Aeneas carried his father on his back and made his way to safety. After arriving at the designated safe haven for those desiring to depart Troy, Aeneas turned to search for his wife Creusa, but found that she had gone without a trace. So, lastly, after everyone leaves the city, Aeneas returns to look for her, but they only find her ghost. She assures him that he should not grieve since he will soon have a new house and wife in Hesperia. Aeneas, somewhat relieved, abandons the flaming city of Troy and guides the remaining citizens towards the mountains. Then Aeneas returned to check in with Anchises and Ascanius. He discovered they had a sizable group of refugees waiting for him to take charge. The following day, the small group of survivors set out for Mount Ida. And that brings us the end of the story in Aeneid Book 2. Thanks for listening.
So now, who are the characters in the Aeneid Book 2? First, of course, is Aeneas, the protagonist in the story. His father is Anchises, the one who helped him understand his destiny. Ascanius is the name of his son. Creusa is the mother of Ascanius and Aeneas' first wife, who also died during the fall of Troy in the Trojan War. Dido is the mythical queen of the Carthage, who also fell in love with Aeneas. Laocoon is the one who voiced out his doubts about the Trojan horse. Panthus, a priest of Apollo in Troy. Priam or King Priam, the last king of Troy who was killed by Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus or Neoptolemus is the son of Achilles. Sinon is the one who persuaded the Trojans that the horse was an offering to the goddess Athena. And Venus is the mother of Aeneas. As we can see, the themes of Book 2 are all about honor and respect, which represents the duties and responsibilities that was shown in the story despite of the fall of Troy during the war. On the other hand, the literary criticism that is expounded in this story was archetypal criticism, as we know that Iliad and Odyssey always hints numerous symbols or signs. In Book 2, one of the symbols is fire, that is both inspiring and vengeful, as it symbolizes the destruction of Troy, while it is also a symbol that represents a good omen in the future of Ascanius, which is the son of Aeneas. And the second symbol is the serpent, that was first interpreted as a sign of Laocoon has offended Minerva or Athena, but almost everyone knows that in this story, a serpent is a signal of a death or destruction. So that is the end of Aeneid Book 2. Thank you for lending your ears upon this masterpiece.
Wow, it's really true that time flies when you are having fun.
Indeed. So if anyone has questions or you have something to add, please don't be shy and raise your virtual hands and talk. Also, you can type your opinions or violent reactions in the comment section down below.
Well, folks, I'm afraid that our time is up. We thank you for your undivided attention during this presentation, and we hope to see you again next time. Thank you.